Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share yet another update on my experience with the Samsung Galaxy Tab S8 Ultra. I'll start off today's video by letting all of you know that in my opinion, this is the best tablet ever made. So in spite of its high price, you are getting an incredibly dynamic offering. And that's coming from someone who originally thought there was no way that this Tab S7 Plus would possibly be traded in. And after using this since launch, I can now tell you I'm more confident than ever that there's no way for me to go back to a smaller form factor. Now, for many of you, the Tab S7 Plus, which has been updated with the Tab S8 Plus, is the sweet spot. But obviously, you are not the people carrying a tablet in your pocket, and there's nothing wrong with that. But coming from someone like me that is accustomed to having a nearly 8-inch tablet now in its third generation with the Z Fold line, it's tough for me to justify not having the largest tablet. It's something where 12.4 was great, but as time passed, I found myself using my laptops, my Ultrabooks, that were slightly larger more often than the tablet, simply because I was carrying a tablet in my pocket now, right? But with something like this has given fresh life to using a tablet for me personally, and I think for many of you as well who've been waiting for a larger form factor, well, than has ever existed. And yes, I am not including the Galaxy View. That is not a premium tablet. It was a piece of junk for the most part, and that's why we haven't seen a new version in years. Now, with that out of the way, let's jump into some of the things that make this amazing. So first and foremost, besides that display, we have a competent processor. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 is good. A little bit of thermal throttling because Samsung decided to make this a 5.5 millimeter thick or thin design, making it thinner than the iPad. Yes, you heard right. But the S Pen is another reason that this tablet is phenomenal. So if you're a student, if you're an artist, you're going to appreciate the ability to essentially do whatever you possibly could want from a note-taking or hobby angle with a device like this. More importantly, since that's not a new thing, but with a device this size. And one thing I can say, I'm not the artist in the family, my other half is that I always found tablets to be fairly small when it came to actually trying to, use them for digital art. But now with a device like this, you're operating at a whole different scale. And that definitely has a great appeal, I think, for anyone who is, again, taking notes even. It doesn't have to be an artistic inclination. It just has to be someone who feels that, they want to be able to do more. Now, on this note, I will say, and there's no Samsung Note anymore, so it's not cute, I don't like the placement of this button. Neither does my other half. When you're using the pen, it's inevitable that you kind of are going to accidentally press it. It just gets in the way. So Samsung, if you're listening, and again, I have no affiliation with Samsung. I purchased this device. That's why I'm doing a trade-in, folks. In fact, there's no Samsung device I've ever covered in my 10 years of being here on YouTube that has been gifted to me or, given to me for review as a loaner. So just for anyone thinking that I'm somehow employed by Samsung, you can get off that train immediately. So I'm not in love with that. I'm also not in love with the notch, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But again, for artists, students, even just someone in a corporate environment that wants to be able to take notes, this to me is better than the iPad Pro simply because you have more screen real estate. So while Apple has more apps optimized for pen input, which is a great advantage, and that's mostly the only advantage that Apple has left, and I'll get to why, because from a software perspective, Samsung has outclassed them at this point. I think having more screen real estate for writing and drawing for some users is going to be more important than merely having several more apps to utilize. And of course, that's on a case-by-case basis, but something still worth pointing out. So I really like what has been done here. I think, we're in a whole nother realm. So moving away from that, and it doesn't hurt that we have that 120 hertz refresh rate, or that Samsung has worked actively to give us more of a pen to paper experience with feedback so that it doesn't just feel like you're drawing on glass, even though you are just drawing on glass. So let's go out of the pen application suite. That was just Pen Up, which comes with the tablet, of course. But because we have a 16:10 aspect ratio, that's one of the ways I have been able personally to get over this notch, because the notch right there, that cutout for two of the four cameras, is something that I think is a very poor move when it comes to design. But because you will never be watching any content on this machine that will actually utilize that at least by default is a 16:9 aspect ratio. Now here you can see it is filling the frame, but that's the thumbnail. And as soon as I start to hit play, it is not filling the frame. And you can see we have letterboxing up here and down at the bottom. And that's because this is 16:9 content, not 16:10. Now, there is a way inside of Samsung's One UI to mask this by essentially doing this, creating a black bar across the top. I'll show you that in settings. And for some of you, that'll be necessary. For me personally, not necessary. And again, that's because most content you're going to consume is 16:9. And this is a content consumption dream. Netflix, HBO Max, YouTube, you're going to love this thing. I mean, that's just the truth of the story. And part of it is how great the speakers are. Also, another thing that you can say are better than what you will find on any Apple competing product, aka the iPad Pro. Take a listen. Make sure the volume is all the way up. I mean, it's just a gorgeous device. What else can I tell you? Go ahead and pause that. And one of the really great things about this is that you don't have to give up battery life. When I first saw the specs on this, my concern was such a large display, high refresh rate. We're screwed. Well, we're not. Anywhere from 7 to 10 hours, depending on your screen brightness and use case, that to me is right where it needed to be. So, again, great overall experience, but where does Samsung really kill it? You already know it has an amazing display. It has great cameras. I only really care about these for video conferencing. The two on the back are also really good, but again, video conferencing is the key, and Apple, putting them in the portrait position to me is incredibly stupid. That'll probably be part of their revision once they get a larger tablet to market, which I don't think is going to be too far away now that there is true competition for the first time. And really, there was true competition with the Tab S6 and Tab S7 Plus. It just didn't get the buzz that this tablet has finally reined in, because frankly, just like folding devices, Apple users now have something to look at that, Apple doesn't have a product to offer them in place of. And that's really where I think people are forced to jump ship. And that's because when technology companies decide to sit on their hands, whether it's Apple getting lazy in their world of mobile computing, Intel getting lazy, Microsoft getting lazy, they all pay the price. Does it mean they're going to go away or fall apart? No. But it does mean they're going to have to change strategy. And Samsung has taken so much of the pie from, other corporations, as has companies like, when you look at mobile computing, specifically smartphones. I mean, what a huge miss by so many manufacturers that you would have expected would be at the top of that business. But I digress. Another quick sample. I'll stick to, LG in this case and their demos. But just gorgeous stuff. And the audio quality, again, stellar. Bring that up here so you can hear it properly. All right, I'm going to stop that. I mean, if there's any doubt about content consumption, erase it now, because you're going to love this. There's no question this device will blow you away. It's better than anything you've ever used. I mean, yes, there are laptops that can outperform it, but this isn't a laptop. And none of those machines, of course, can touch the weight. 1.6 for the tablet, roughly 2 when you have this whole package. Now, the keyboard cover, really expensive at $350, but if you're spending $1,100, $1,200, or $1,400 on this tablet, I think you're going to bite the bullet, especially since the pre-order offer of getting a free keyboard cover is gone. It was a great deal, but as I stated in my last update, part of throwing a gift or a bone to early adopters, that on the back end, people who waited, to see reviews like the one you're watching now, you're not going to be punished because in all likelihood, this product's going to go down in price. So even if this stays at $350, you'll recoup it somewhere in the price of the tablet, not being launch crazy pricing anymore. Now, for those of you wondering, do I need to get, this model, which is the 12 gig of RAM, 256 gig internal storage, that's priced at $1,200. It's the middle of the road of the three models. I think it's the best. I mean, personally, it's what I would go with. That's why you're watching it right now. It's the one I picked because I felt for the pricing, it was the best that money could buy. And that's because I think the $1,400 model with 16 gigs of RAM and 512 is over the top. And of course, the entry level at 1100 with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of internal storage, I felt was a little underwhelming. And I'll explain my logic. When it comes to all three models, you're going to get the same performance for the most part. Okay, yes, the top of the line has more storage and more RAM, and this somewhere along the middle. This more closely matches what I'm accustomed to with the Z Fold line. So what that tells me, and I would say this about anyone who uses a smartphone every day, which is the majority of humans on this planet, if you find your experience to be good with that device and it has similar specifications to the tablet, you can expect similar performance. So since my Z Fold 3 has 12 gigs of RAM, a very similar processor, very similar amount of internal storage, and is running One UI, it's safe to assume, and it's already been proven in my experience with this, that the experience here is going to be very good, and that has been the case. Now, will your experience be good with the entry level? Sure, as long as you do not need more RAM, which means you won't be, desiring more headroom for more multitasking. That means running many apps at the same time and still expecting performance to stay solid, then you don't really need the 12 or 16 gigs. The next question you need to answer for yourself is the 128 gigs of internal storage enough for you? That's another question. It's like my current Z Fold 3 has 512 gigs of internal storage. So I went for the middle route again because I think 256 is going to be enough because it's not my phone. It's my tablet. It's a secondary device. My phone is my primary. So if 128 is enough for you, if you don't use anywhere near that amount on your current smartphone, then go with the entry level. Likewise, if you know that you multitask a lot and you're going to need as much RAM as possible and as much internal storage, that's what the next two models are for. But remember, you'll get the same display, same processor, same overall experience, same battery life, same speakers, same cameras, and of course the same computing experience when picking up the keyboard. So don't get too caught up in that thinking you have to spend the most. This isn't an Apple product. You don't need to spend the most to get a great experience. Beyond that, another thing that I think everyone needs to be aware of is that there's been a lot of talk about this being too big to be practical. I think you already know from my point of view, it's quite the opposite. It's big enough to be practical. In fact, that may end up being the title of this video because for me, as I already stated, carrying tablets, phones that can become tablets in my pocket, I need something large enough to justify being a tablet at this point. And I think that's why Samsung has come full circle with a device like this that is nearly as big as an Ultrabook. And that's why, for me, it blurs the line more than any tablet before it. Now, many Apple users are saying, oh, I want, the Tab S8 Plus is amazing. I totally get it. As I stated, it's because they didn't realize how good the Tab S7 Plus is. Now, I personally can't recommend this only because, meaning the Tab S8 Plus, it's literally this device. They even are selling the exact same keyboard cover for it, for the S8 Plus that originally launched with this device, the S7 Plus. The reason being is that, well, really all they did was upgrade the internals because they didn't have to do anything else. I mean, you could have made the argument that this device was better than the iPad simply because of software. And again, I think that, going with the S8 Plus, it's just not a game-changing product. And really that just signals you haven't been looking at the competition, which I'm glad you are now, whatever it takes. So let's talk about software. TouchWiz, its history, it used to be the kiss of death for Samsung. Now it is a blessing for all of us. I mean, when you look at what Apple has done, once they established dominance in the tablet realm, they left it to developers and pretty much washed their hands of investing more time and money in that operating system. I mean, it took a long time for multitasking to become a thing, and even once it did, it's still lackluster compared to what you can do here. And I've shown before, what you can accomplish with multitasking. If you want to open multiple apps, it's very easy to do so. Even if you want to go with multiple instances of different apps, it can be done, of course. And it just works beautifully. The resizing of windows. I mean, look, Google dropped the ball on Android tablets. The proverbial shitting of the bed, if you will. They really abandoned something they never should have just because they weren't seeing the return they wanted. Samsung took that opportunity and they really worked their butts off. And that's what this, represents. TouchWiz went from cancer to the savior of Samsung's mobile business. It's not just because Samsung makes great hardware anymore. It's also because they make the best software. Now, they didn't reinvent a platform, but they sort of did because they went from an overlay to, I think, really reestablishing what Android could do or defining it. DeX, it used to be something many of us considered a beta years ago. Now it's the standard, in my opinion, yet again, for a near dual boot experience in a mobile OS. So to have this Windows-like performance where instead of, looking at just Android in its phone-like state on a 14.6-inch display, you now have a true suite of software that handles what you're doing the way a computer would. And I think it's great. And speaking to, some of the internal specifications, not specifications, but rather settings that you can change, like I was mentioning before, dealing with the actual full screen apps, can't do it inside of DeX because inside of DeX, everything's going to be windowed and you can control that to your heart's content. But inside of the traditional OS, this is where you're going to modify that. So I'll probably take us back there later. But just everything that has been done here is such a stark difference from traditional Android experiences. And yes, app development, I'll be the first to say, it needs to be picked up. The devs have to see a way to make money in order to be inspired. And I think they will now, finally, that we've got an Android tablet that's better than anything on the market and that's selling out to prove it. So that, once they see dollar signs, they develop. That's why Apple has such a great ecosystem. It's not just because they're brilliant. Credit is due. They've gotten it. There's no question about it. And now I think we're going to see the tide turn. We're going to see developers come. But regardless of that, Samsung has ensured that we're looking at a better overall experience. So again, when it comes to multitasking, when it comes to different general tasks, those of you who've tried both, you already know, if you've tried a latest and greatest version of what Samsung has done with One UI on top of Android, especially here with 12, that it's more efficient. It's smoother. Now, most Apple users don't know this, and they are completely confident in that glass house of believing that it cannot be chipped away, but it's already been destroyed. It's just a matter of time. And as Apple users migrate to this device, it's not going to be about comparing it or who you're a fan of. It's about you're spending your hard-earned money. You want to get a product that reflects that. And reputation only goes so far. I don't mean that just for Apple. For Samsung, too. They don't always make a great product. They make turds, too. Don't worry. No one is immune from making turds. In fact, we all do it, don't we? No, no joke or pun intended there. It's the truth. And it applies to every manufacturer. None of them are perfect. But Samsung has just done an excellent job. It's something where there's very little to criticize on this device. And that's why most people are talking about two things. Only two. That's it. Either that it's too heavy or that it's not bright enough. And both of those, I feel, are BS. Simply because, again, what tablet do you use that you hold all day or that you hold for long stretches? I mean, if you're on a commute, I get it. But even there, depending on what you're commuting on, there might be a way to prop it up on your lap, for example. Pretty easy with a kickstand. Not the most ideal, a la Surface Pro. We all know how that goes. But it's doable. If you're at home, I mean, I'm never holding this tablet really or the Tab S7 Plus or any generation before it. Because again, they all have a way to be, put on a stand or use a kickstand that they have natively. So I'm just not finding this argument that it's too big. I mean, this thing is so thin and so lightweight. If you want to drop it in a bag, it's not like taking a laptop with you. It's not even like taking an Ultrabook with you, even though it is directly attempting to replace that Ultrabook. So But remember, an Ultrabook that has a nearly 15-inch display. And, again, it has something for everyone. It is a one-size-fits-all in the same way the iPad is, except it's more feature-rich. It fits even more sizes, if you will. So, again, I don't have an issue. This is always, even if I pull the keyboard off, which, by the way, another major improvement that I didn't mention, but I did in the last, I started off, we have backlighting now. We have a larger trackpad. If I go ahead and show you the keyboard from the S7 Plus, which was the best Samsung had ever done at the time, you can see there's a pretty big difference here. Pretty big. And again, that's without taking into account the backlighting. The backlighting is just a total game changer because, that was just kind of unacceptable for the price point, in my opinion. Backlighting should be there. And now with a $350 keyboard, well, there's no way to argue it. But if you go with the Tab S8 Plus, you will not be getting the backlighting. That's another reason I don't know how people are looking past that. But build quality is excellent. You have storage expansion, which I haven't mentioned in this video, but I have previously. Right there, you can pop in a micro SD card, take it up to 1 terabyte of additional storage if you want. That's the largest capacity on the market. Volume rocker, power button. The fingerprint scanner is built in to the display. Speakers, microphone, the pogo port for attachments such as the keyboard cover that I'm using presently on it. And that's pretty much it. Outside of course, it's Type-C charger. Now let's talk about charging. This accepts 45 watt or supports 45 watt delivery. And I'll be covering some 45 watt chargers that I got in recently that I think will be of interest to SAMI users, especially since they don't include a charger, which I could complain about. I don't think it's incredibly nice of them that they do that, but it also isn't the end of the world. They claim they're doing it to protect the world, and, I've got a lot of them, so maybe they're making a valid point about that. But even if you don't, they're not that expensive to pick up. You can get a 65 watt charger on Amazon for like $30, and you're in business. And it'll take you under 100 minutes to charge this thing up, so I don't think that's bad. I'm going to try more chargers and see if I can do better, depending on models. Of course, your S Pen does charge actively, pocketed in the pocket, as you can see. Extra cameras there on the back, which I don't really need, but they're there just in case. And then, something I want to talk about on pricing, and that's how I'm wrapping up today's video, because I'm not going to be doing the gaming demo, but of course, if you want a game, I have a subscription to GeForce Now. Excellent way to turn this 14.6-inch tablet into a gaming beast, not on an Android platform, which to me is not really what I want to play. I'm a PC gamer, console gamer, essentially my entire life, going back to Atari, so that dates me, doesn't it? But I think most of you already know probably where I lie. But this Xbox Game Pass Ultimate for PC, I'll probably be doing a demo with both of those because this is ideal. At my age and with my experience in life, I don't want to game on tiny screens. There are many of you out there that do. I'm not a teenager. I'm not a 20-something, so now I've really made it clear. So bigger is better when it comes to gaming. And, I already have corrective lenses on my head, so it's like, come on. I don't want to game on a tiny screen. My primary monitor is a 48-inch OLED. So I think you get the picture. I want a larger display to do any form of gaming. This might actually get me to do some mobile gaming on a tablet. And with a display like this, battery life and overall capability, excellent. But move away from gaming, okay? Let's do that. Let's talk, and this is where I close things, about that price, because I've already mentioned it's really expensive. Yes, I do feel this is a great example of getting what you pay for because everything is top-notch on it. However, it's still really expensive, right? And you could go for something completely different if that's what you're after, like a regular laptop, and get more functionality for less money. That's just a fact of life, right? It's all about how you want to spend it. But 3 uses that I think people overlook is that if you were to go out and get a portable monitor that was a 15-inch panel, an OLED touchscreen like this, even though this is not 15 exactly and it's not 4K, a little less than 4K clearly, more like 2K to 3K, you'd be set back about $700-800. And that would be from a no-name manufacturer. In fact, I've had a lot of those companies reach out to me, not to review the OLEDs yet because they're still very niche, but they're out there. So, and you can use this as a monitor very easily. I'll be demoing that in a second. Then when you think of it as a graphics or drawing tablet, if you were to get a dedicated product in that category, you're also going to be spending like close to $1,000 for something with this sort of capability. Then take into account that it is a tablet with latest and greatest components, and well, we already know tablets set you back, well, $1,000 on average, I would say at this point when they're premium. So when you take into account the 3 different identities that this can possess, and the fact that it can ultimately end up also being an ultrabook in essence, it's really easy to see how something like this can retail for over $1,000. It doesn't mean I agree with it, but it can be justified. Now, just to throw out there a little bit of performance here, I'm going to go ahead and just give you one last demo before we wrap things up, and hopefully the audio has been okay in spite of the microphone being pointed away. I forgot there that I pointed it towards the machine for audio performance. We're going to find out if that, ended up essentially dragging my audio through the mud, but I just wanted to show you what it was like to utilize this as a secondary display. So I'm going to go ahead and just open up Super Display. And by the way, you can do this natively with Windows as well. I may make a dedicated video for this for anyone that's interested. But you can see right now I am just going to connect to it, or at least it should. Going to go ahead and open up Super Display. And there we have it. Oh, it's connecting to, you can see I've got a secondary monitor. So just like that, instantly I have another display, which I think is pretty brilliant to have that immediately. And of course, you have touch input because this is Super Display. You can see by touching that, you can lock the touch input. So this is something that on its own, again, I think gives a lot of novelty. And of course, you can do this for free. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect. I'm going to actually just shut off the Wi-Fi. You can, this is not purchased yet. I'm just demoing it here on dummy account, but this is something you can obviously do for free using Windows, right? You can do that. You don't need to buy a piece of software, but keep in mind, when you do that, you don't have touch input. So if touch input matters, and I'll give you a good example. Again, my other half works in architecture and often needs to make notes on projects. Because this can act as a secondary monitor with pen input, and trust me, I cover a lot of displays that claim to do that, but they aren't tablets that have all these capabilities, like the S8 Ultra. She can make those markups using something like Super Display, not have to go through the process of printing out projects, marking them up, scanning them back into the system. So she's cut all of that out, make her markups on here, and be able to share those instantly in a PDF. I mean, it can change the way you work depending on what you do. Now, for me, having that pen input is nice. It doesn't change the way I work because here I am working with all of you. But again, it's just another example of what makes this tablet really unique. So it's expensive, but it is absolutely a game changer in my opinion, especially if you're coming like me from the Tab S7 Plus. You're going to be happy. Yes, the performance isn't going to be an incredible difference, but everything else, again, the display, the form factor, the cameras, having that large display for the pen, it's all there. So if they truly could make a bigger version of the Tab S7 Plus, they've done it, even though it's, of course, in the 8th generation. And right now, it's easy for me to recommend. Really easy. I didn't think that would be the case when I first ordered this, I have to tell you. I really didn't think I would be this emphatic about it. I thought it was just going to be a larger device. And yes, I'd been waiting for that for many years. And I thought because I'd been waiting so long, the novelty had worn off. But instead, here I am telling all of you how this is the best tablet and one of the best pieces of tech on the market here in 2021. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe and please stay safe. Later.